And I always go back to Pilate, and Christ is in front of him, and Christ tells him that this is the truth. And he said, "What is truth?" And he was looking right at it. It's such a blessing for us in the day that we live to have something that we can go to that is truth. You know, you can go to one side of the news, and you can go to the other side of the news, and you end up with a headache. It's hard to believe that two people could be looking, or two groups of people could be looking at things so differently. And manipulate in every way they can to get their lies across. And it's just sad. It's hard. It's hard to find anything. I always share that whenever I want to buy something from Amazon, I'll go down and look at all the comments of, what they say about the stuff. And I'll get the first 6 of them, and I'm ready to push the button to hit it. But on the 7th one, they said, "It fell apart in my hands. It's a piece of junk." Okay, why did I bother? But I can always go to this and find truth. I can always find God's truth. And this is why this is so incredible. And I just pray, because we're looking at 31 weeks of listening to it. So much of it's repeated. And so much of it's repeated because it's so easy to forget that in everyday life. Well, it's just a gray area, or it's just a white lie, or it's just, well, if I didn't lie, then I wouldn't be able to get this or that, and that's important. I love my grandkids. I just love them. And sometimes the stories aren't always the truth. Sometimes my middle grandchild can really get out there. And I'll say, "Honey, what Papa loves more than anything is truth. It's the most important thing I can have in your and my relationship. There's nothing you can say I would never forgive. But I need truth. I need you to tell me truth. I need you to," and we have to be doing that with our grandchildren and our children and even our friends. We need to make people accountable because God hates a lie. And it just tells us this over and over again. And so we have to be preaching that. We have to do it in love. You can tell me anything in love, but if you want to yell at me, it's not wise. You're shut off immediately, and all I can think about is beating you up. It's just not wise. You're not going to get anything out of it. In fact, I'm able to do just the opposite thing if you're yelling at me, or you're being mocking, or you're being cruel. But if you want to say something to me in love, that has all the power in the world. Well, let's look at these things of wisdom. Solomon, probably other than Christ, one of the most intelligent people that ever walked the face of the earth. And in that gifting that God gave him, wisdom, he fell so short in all the things that he wrote. And then in the end, he said, everything I bought into, everything I did, all the money that I had, all the fame that I had, all the value of this world was meaningless. It came to nothing. He even used poop as what it related to. He just saw no value in it. Everything was lost when he lost the wisdom to live in the wisdom that he shared. Proverbs 12, verse 1. To learn, you must love discipline. It is stupid to hate correction. See, anyone who's open to discipline and instruction shows that they really want to learn. The person who resents being told anything and refuses correction is basically unintelligent. Verse 2, the Lord approves of those who are good, but he condemns those who plan wickedness. Wickedness never brings stability, but the godly have deep roots. Wickedness is anything that's not of God. Anything's that's different than what God is saying is wickedness. Lives that are dominated by wickedness have no stability whatsoever. They're like a seed that falls on the rocky places. In Matthew 13:5, it talked about Other seeds fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. The seeds sprouted quickly because of the soil being shallow. But the plant soon withered under the hot sun. And since they didn't have deep roots, they died. This speaks of someone that may have started well, but with time their true nature showed up and the wickedness was exposed. Verse 4, a worthy wife is a crown for her husband, but a disgraceful woman is like a cancer in his bones. Her strength and character makes her husband proud and honored. She adds dignity to him. Now you look at people that have had powerful wives. I'm going to take Charlie Kirk, for example. That woman's incredible. You watch Charlie, and I never really knew much about his wife, but I knew that he must have had an amazing wife to do what he did and do what he could do. There's no way I could have done in ministry what I did in ministry if Valerie hadn't been who she is. She didn't marry a pastor. She married a bodybuilder that ran an athletic club that lived to have the newest and the best thing that was ever out there. Wanted to travel, wanted to spend money, wanted to go on vacations, wanted to buy new everything there was. That's who she married. And then she ends up with some pastor guy that, it was a big difference. But she said, I can see the calling in your life, and I'm not going to get in the way of it. But the one thing you want to know, I'm not going to dress like a pastor's wife. It's okay, it's a deal. But someone with a disgraceful wife, who's not strong morally, he's using something as decaying in his bones. Her shame gives him an inner pain. I've seen men that were called to ministry, but they didn't have a wife that would have worked with. And so it shows the importance of a godly woman. Verse 5. The plans of the godly are just. The advice of the wicked is treacherous. The goals of the righteous are honorable, but the plans of the wicked are deceitful and ignorant. It's hard to believe what kind of bad advice you could get from the ungodly. Yeah, I know your marriage is tough, buddy. You need to dump her. Oh yeah, you should do this, or if you did this, you could make that kind of money, or if you just lied about that. The ungodly are not the people you want to go to when you have to make difficult decisions. You go to the person that's wise, and that's godly wisdom. Verse 6, the words of the wicked are like a murderous ambush, but the words of the godly save lives. By their words, by their speech, the ungodly seek to lay fatal traps for innocent people. They're always trying to get the upper hand, the bigger piece for themselves. But the words of the godly are other-centered. I love the sticker I have for my truck. I've had Jesus stickers and I've had God stickers and sayings and everything, but I found that just others on the back of my truck has given me more of a chance to witness to people than anything else. And people go, others, what's others? I said, well, a Christian should be other-centered. They should esteem other people above themselves. And I break into these conversations because of it. Now, if you got a Jesus sticker, that's fine. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm just saying otherness, other-centeredness. It should be the picture of a Christian. Unfortunately, there's not enough people that call themselves Christians that are other-centered. And that's what makes it hard for the world. Verse 7, the wicked die and disappear, but the family of the godly stand firm. Godly people live in a way that they have a good foundation. They're not swept away by calamity. And even if they get lost, they have a compass, a direction to bring them back to the Lord. The wicked disappear in sin, and there's no place to go but death. We do an illustration on Christmas Eve, and we light the candles, and everybody in the room has a candle. And I just kind of share as I come down, there's times in our life that the light of Christ may not be shining bright, maybe even go out. But then there's always a brother or sister with that light, and then that lights the candle back. It's the community. It's the other godly people that help with what they tell them, the good advice, the wisdom that they get, to stand behind them, to help them when they fall. That's what a body does. That's what Christians do, or that's what they're supposed to do. Not knock them, make fun of them. Verse 8, a sensible person wins admiration, but a warped mind is despised. People will speak kindly about someone with insight and wisdom. It doesn't take too much time to avoid a person with a warped mind, or it shouldn't. Verse 9, better to be an ordinary person with a servant than to be self-important and have no food. The combination of common sense with food on the table is better than pretending that you're starving, that you're not starving. Now, I knew this guy, and he was a character. And he would go to nightclubs and he would light cigars with a $100 bill. And yet this guy didn't have 2 cents other than a $100 bill to his name. His mother had to help him pay his bills. He was a full grown-up, pretending to be something that he wasn't. And it was a joke. Verse 10, the godly care for their animals, but the wicked are always cruel. Well, we know God cares for animals because Jesus said, even when one sparrow falls, the Father knows about it. Matthew 10:29. Most people have a natural affection for animals. Verse 11, a hard worker has plenty of food, but a person who chases fantasies has no sense. If someone is willing to work hard, they won't go hungry. There's always a need. You can wash windows, mow lawns, pressure wash driveways. You can, I think I just saw, you can, the major Amazon's paying $25 an hour or something like that. There's always a way to make money if you're willing to work hard. But if you want instant gratification, you'll always be broke. It is hard work that feeds your family. It is hard work and consistency that gets you where you need to go. The guy that does dirty jobs and he walks around, he's really working to put America back to work and programs. And he's just saying, the average person goes to a trade school for 4 years, doesn't come out with a ton of debt, and after 10 years of working consistently, he'll own a home, he'll own a car, and he'll have thousands in the bank. And that's anybody that's willing to work. It's there to be done. There's so many needs in the world that we live in. But a person who spends their time on worthless fantasies, I want to be a YouTuber, or I want to do this, or I don't want to work, or I don't want to get dirty. And they're the ones with an empty stomach and an empty head, or someone is supporting them, some mother that, is enabling them not to work. Now look, if you're a successful YouTuber, that's great, but not everybody's going to be. Sometimes it's just hard work that you have to do. And everyone has different talents and different gifts. Not everyone's going to be a brain surgeon, not everyone's going to be an electrician. Whatever God's gifted you in, work hard for that. Verse 12, thieves are jealous of each other's loot, but the godly are well rooted and bear their own fruit. In other words, the wicked covet what belongs to others. In contrast, righteous are satisfied to provide for their own needs and they're content. Always wanting what someone else has is wickedness. Man, being content, I think for me, someone who was never content. I remember when Honda came out with the 750 Interceptor, they only put 5 of them out in California, and they went in different places, and then each state got 1 or 2. They were a motorcycle like never thought before. Street bike that was almost track ready. And they were beautiful, red, white, and blue. I read every magazine article. I had a poster of one in my house, and I called every state. I called every Honda dealership. I called everyone I knew because I wanted this bike, because it would be the greatest bike ever built, and I would have one. And out of nowhere, one of the guys in California that owns a company got sick and wanted to sell it. One of his employees knew me and called me, and I immediately went and bought it. I bought the leather pants to match it, the leather boots to match it. I had the gloves to match it. I had the ultimate motorcycle. It was not 2 months later that Suzuki, Kawasaki, and Yamaha had better bikes than that one. It was obsolete in 2 months. I had spent a year with every thought, every effort, working, not liking the motorcycle that I had, not content with it. I was totally content with it till it came out. Miserable. And in 2 months, I had the crummiest motorcycle of all the dealerships. There was no fulfilling that contentment. No matter how good you were, no matter how fast you are, no matter how new it was, a new one came out that was better. It was designed to make us never be content. Nothing in this world can bring total contentment except for the Lord. Because in the Lord is eternity. In the Lord isn't going to wear out. In the Lord it's not going to get old, not going to be obsolete, not need oil changes and new tires, and there's no staying on top. It's exhausting. And when I found the Lord, all the priorities in my life changed. I remember sitting on my dock. I had built my own 4,000 square foot home on the water with my ski boat and the hydro hoist and every toy you could imagine. And I wanted a fast boat. And so I was looking at some twin engine fast boats, and you know, the company I was doing all the Starbucks, Noah's Bagels, Chevy's restaurants. I could buy it. And I was sitting on my dock and I was looking at that. And I just remember the Lord saying, none of that has ever filled you, David, but the things of the kingdom will. I've gifted you to do this. How long do you want to spend doing that? And I went to India right after that. I went on a mission trip. I watched people with nothing giving their blood away so that they could buy a projector and show Jesus films. And I saw joy in those people giving their life to the Lord, having purpose that's going to last forever. I remember being there, and they were feeding us and they were treating us like kings. We were teaching the natives, and they come in and they said, 2 guys want to meet you. They just got thrown off a train for Jesus. And in comes these 2 little Indian guys, and they were raspberried from head to toe, and they were so excited that serving God, they got thrown off a train for serving God. I mean, I just looked at that passion in those people, and I'm going, I'm a slug. And I came back home and I looked at all the materialism and all the stuff, and I went, man, this is meaningless. And I'm not saying you can't have stuff and you can't enjoy stuff, but it can't be your God. It just can't. It's always going to fall short. There's always going to be someone better. It's always going to become obsolete. But the things you do for God will never. They're stored up in heaven. It's so fundamental, it's so basic, and it took me, I think, close to 40 years to figure it out. Verse 13, the wicked are trapped by their own words, but the godly escape such trouble. Ungodly people are so often trapped by their words. It comes from not consistently telling a story. They trip themselves up. A liar has to have a great memory. Otherwise, their story never lines up. And it never does. Eventually, a lie is always found out. And to support a lie, to support one, they just have to tell more lies. It's got to be exhausting. You know, the amazing thing is when you tell the truth, you can rest in what you said. It may not have been liked. Someone may have even been offended by it. But if you tell the truth, you never have to worry about somebody finding you out, because they will. Verse 14, wise words bring many benefits, and hard work brings rewards. Back again. Now, it's interesting, because a person can obtain success from their words. Knowing when and where and how to say things are very important. Working hard is important, but neither one are enough on their own. Wise words help guide your actions and make your efforts more successful. If you work hard and speak wisely, man, that can be incredible. Hard work and wisdom go together. You're more likely to get good results. I got into the trade late. I ran an athletic club till I was 30 years old that was supposed to be mine, and it didn't work out. And at 30 years old, I didn't have a trade. I didn't have a job. I don't know what I was going to do. And I looked at all the trades and went, wow, roofing looks terrible. Framing looks miserable. Plumbing, I don't like that. So I started looking at all the trades and I went, hey, that electrician thing looks good. And so I went to a real quick trade school and I just worked. I worked hard. I learned hard. I never quit. And I was able to, it's a miracle what God allowed me to do from nothing. You work hard, but one of the reasons that I got so many of those jobs is that when I would sit down with the person, what I told them I would do. I believed it and they believed it because there was wisdom in the speech. So many people can tell a story, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and they never do it. But our reputation, because no matter what it took, there were sometimes 2 and 3 days in a row on one of those Starbucks to meet the schedule that I would go without sleep 2 or 3 days and work morning, noon, and night to make the schedule go. Sometimes the other contractors would fall short in these stores. We were putting these stores out like every 7 weeks. And if one of the contractors failed, we picked up their schedule and we got them back on time. So there was never a question on who was going to do their next job. So the words and the work went together. They need to. Your word is everything. Verse 15, fools think that their own way is right, but the wise listen to others. You can't tell a fool anything. They think they know everything. They won't listen. But a wise person does welcome advice. They realize that it's impossible for one person to know everything. Man, being humble can allow you to learn so much. Verse 16, a fool is quick-tempered, but a wise person stays calm when insulted. I think the greatest thing that calmed me down is when I became a pastor, I would read the headlines of the newspaper when I wanted to do something bad. There were times I jumped out of my car and went back to like a Corolla Toyota and picked up the bumper and literally picked the car up and down off the ground. Bounced it off the ground, screaming at the person in the car because they flipped me off or ran me off the road. Such a quick temper. And now I just smile and wave because I could just imagine headlines, Calvary Chapel pastor outside of a car flipping it up and down. It wouldn't have gone over well. It wouldn't even look well. Quick-tempered person is ignorant, especially in the world we live in today. You don't know who's going to pull out a gun, who's going to shoot you. These kids that are running up and kicking the door with the back of their foot, then take off running. Parents, talk to your kids about that, because it's like we used to ring doorbells and run. But now there's a kid that got shot and killed from it. It's not funny. It's extremely dangerous in the world we live in. But you have to, because, when the kids are all hanging around their buddies and their buddies are all doing it, somehow it can seem right to them. Parents, you have to talk to your children. Oh, my kid would never do that. Look, don't take a chance. Speak to your kids. James tells us, understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. You must be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. The fool goes off on everything. Temper is the weakest form of defense. I remember being on a cruise ship one time, and everyone's waiting to get off the cruise ship. And there were two big women in the back of the line, and they started screaming and yelling and hollering and making a scene. And they made so much noise, they let them out in front of everybody. And they just learned from a child. You throw a temper tantrum, you get what you want. It is the weakest form of defense, and it's very childish. And it isn't honoring. Verse 17, an honest witness tells the truth. A false witness tells lies. An honest person's governed and motivated by principles and laws of righteousness. Truth is their driving force. As a Christian, that has to be who we are. The ungodly live in deceit. It's amazing how little conscience they have when they're deceiving others. They actually take pleasure in what they think they're getting away with. They don't have the Holy Spirit. They are blind. But for a Christian to be deceitful, they shouldn't find comfort. They should be ashamed. And they should make it right. Look at how sad the description of God's people in Jeremiah's time. Jeremiah the prophet, how he got up every morning, I'll never know. There's no even sign as we read the book of Jeremiah that anybody was ever saved. You want to talk about an unsuccessful ministry as the world looks at it? Can you imagine me getting up here every Sunday and nobody coming? And yet God was pleased with him, that he was faithful. But look at this description of the people he's dealing with in Jeremiah 9, 3-6. My people bend their tongues like bows and shoot out lies. They refuse to stand up for the truth. God's people, they only go from bad to worse. They do not know me, says the Lord. Beware of your neighbor. Don't even trust your brother, for your brothers take advantage of brothers, and friends slander friends. They are all fools and defraud each other. No one tells the truth. With practiced tongues they tell lies. They wear themselves out with all their sinning, and they pile lie upon lie, and utterly refuse to acknowledge me, says the Lord. Wow. Things kind of come around, don't they? That's scary. And yet it's what I see more than I should. Verse 18. Some people make cutting remarks, but the words of the wise bring healing. When you see certain people coming and you have to get ready because they're going to say something hurtful. They have no filter. Then there's others, when they're coming, you're going to feel better because of them. They bring words of encouragement, healing, and encouragement. They're just wonderful. You're blessed. And they are truly a blessing. And we want to be that for people. Verse 19. Truthful words stand the test of time, but lies are soon exposed. Again, the truth is forever. Sooner or later, a lie is exposed. I don't know, man. I just hate to be lied to. I'd much rather be told the truth and deal with hard things. I want to know with the people around me that I can trust what they say. It's critical to me. Verse 20. Deceit fills hearts that are plotting evil, but joy fills hearts that are planning peace. One of the prices you pay for plotting evil, and evil's everywhere, it's the lack of joy you receive. You don't get to live in peace when you're living in evil. Verse 21, no harm comes to the godly, but the wicked have their fill of trouble. The righteous experience is not only joy, but it's also protection. The just are perverted from the evil's perverted, and the consequences follow the behavior is wicked. Verse 22. How many times do we see this? The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in those who tell the truth. I mean, it just doesn't get any simpler. We keep hearing it over and over. Why would it be there over and over and over again? Because it's so true. So as we walk out of here today, let's plant that into our minds and our heads. Let's not let lies come out of our mouth. Verse 23. The wise don't make a show of their knowledge, but the fools broadcast their foolishness. It's so much better to let people see your God-given talents than bragging. I go back in my mind to all the dumb things I've done when I bragged. But I was going riding with a bunch of guys that ride motorcycles in my athletic club, and they were all trials riders and mountain riders, and I had just gotten for Christmas, Valerie had it in the garage, a brand new CR250 Honda motocross bike. And so I'm really excited. I know they go riding, and so I get up early in the morning, I pack all my stuff, and we load up our bikes, and they've got all, the enduro type of motorcycles. And the whole trip out there, they're mocking my motocross bike. Yeah, we know you motocrossers, but what happens when you get in the hills? And then just going on and on and on. And, I could have told them that I was on a motorcycle before I could walk, that I've raced the short track scrambles, and I could have listed off all the things that I've done on a motorcycle, but I just kept quiet. And so we loaded up our bikes and we got out, we started up the trails, and the first hill that we went to was a gigantic hill, as high as you could see. It's muddy and it's got ruts, and I went up about halfway and then turned around and came back down, and they're just hysterical. They're just laughing. Yeah, the motocross bike, you can't even climb the hill. So they all go up the hill, and then I follow them up the hill, and I just kind of ride behind them for half the day. And then we come to this. The thing went forever, and it had crosses and things in it and everything else, and they all take off on it, and I let them go. And so I shoot up behind them, and there's this little cliff thing up to the top of it, and they're up this. And so I launched and went over the top of all of them, went up the top of this hill, and then I parked the bike at the top of the hill, and I sat down there. I was waiting for them when they got up there. And I have more fun with that. I could have bragged all day about what I could do, but it was way better to show them what I could do. I think that there's just wisdom in that, because if I'd have gone out there and not been able to ride with them and had been talking stuff the whole time, it'd have been embarrassment to me. It's way better off just to show people what you can do instead of bragging about what you can do, because when you brag, it can come back and bite you. Verse 24, work hard and become a leader. Be lazy and become a slave. Diligent people rise to positions in leadership. I shared the other day that a couple of the guys here in the church